Hello and welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. It seems our top headline comes out of Oklahoma for the week. It's from the New American. It says, Governor Fallin vetoes pro-life bill, gets prominent GOP position. What? To explain a little further, it says that the New American reports that the pro-life governor, Mary Fallin, vetoed a bill that would have made it a felony to perform abortions. So far, the backlash from conservative circles has been big, but only in Oklahoma. And playing a little bit off of that, the headline, how well did she fare nationally? Well, it says in here that the chairman of the Republican Party, Reince Priebus, named her as co-chair of the platform committee. Again, how does that work? She vetoed the bill that would have virtually outlawed abortions in Oklahoma, and then she's named as someone in charge of coming up with planks for the party. My question is, isn't being against abortion an evergreen plank for the GOP? Oh wait, silly me. This is the establishment GOP, not the conservative grassroots. In the establishment, you can be against things, but be allowed to not take any action on it. In the grassroots, we expect action, not rhetoric. For example, it has been on the GOP watch that some 50 million plus babies have been killed through abortion. Yet what has been done? Congress has done nothing to limit the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, something it certainly can do. It can also cut all funding to related organizations, but it hasn't done that either. So kudos to the Oklahoma State Legislature for recognizing their responsibility to pass such a bill. Hopefully they can override the veto and give other states a roadmap to follow. Now, speaking of irresponsible establishment politicians, Reuters reports that, it says here, Clinton email server broke government rules, watchdog finds. So, remember, what she was doing was she was using a private email server without approval for her work as Secretary of State. And the State Department Inspector General actually came out with this article late last week. Now, the article states, several other inquiries continue, including a U.S. Justice Department investigation into whether the arrangement broke laws. Do we really think she'll be held accountable by anyone? The Clintons have made a living on being responsible to no one. They are professional advocates for victims around the globe, yet they can switch into the role of the victim quite easily, can't they? Remember her whole rant about the vast right-wing conspiracy against her president? That was classic victim status there. Not to mention the time she said her and Bill were nearly destitute after his presidential stint. Millions of Americans would love to see her be an actual victim of the penal system if the FBI and Justice Department were to actually follow through on their job. But don't hold your breath, as they are big players in the globalist movement. It's unlikely she'll be prosecuted unless, of course, the globalists decide to eat one of their own. Our next headline comes from the Washington Post. It reads, 11 states sue Obama administration over bathroom guidance for transgender students. Of course, it should say that 50 states are suing the administration, but unfortunately so many states are dependent upon the federal government for funding. In fact, the article quotes the state education chief in Oklahoma who objects to Obama's directive, saying that the letter sent weeks ago was an implicit threat of loss of federal funds. The article also continues that the U.S. Justice Department and the Education Department said that the letter was in response to questions from schools from around the country. Therein lies the crux of the problem, isn't it? Local schools are looking to the federal government for guidance. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution lists the enumerated powers that are given to Congress by the states. Nowhere in there does it list the responsibility of public education. That means states have a constitutional obligation, according to the 10th Amendment, to oversee this responsibility. They abrogate this responsibility when they view and treat the federal government as a higher authority. Local schools are governed by school boards who are put into place by voters of that school district. The board is directly accountable to that school district. Seeking guidance or accepting funds from the federal government only serves to empower them on their quest to liberate additional powers from the states, which is unconstitutional. The FedGov is not accountable to the school districts, but would be more accountable to the states if the 17th Amendment was repealed. This can only occur with an electorate that understands the constitutional limitations of the federal government and works to keep it in check through various means, including the state legislatures. We'll save any commentary about the immoral transgender movement for later broadcasts. Suffice it to say that we do not support such malicious foolishness. Well, mid-last week, we put out an abbreviated version of our show to highlight some of those organizations behind the protests at the Donald Trump rally in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The Daily Beast followed with an article solidifying our findings. Their headline, How Donald Trump New Mexico Rally Turned Violent. The article reports, organized protest groups did attend the rally, activist George Lujan says. He and his social justice group, Southwest Organizing Project, had spent the previous week planning a demonstration. He claims further in the article that his group had nothing to do with the violence. But Albuquerque City Council member Dan Lewis pointed a finger toward them and a group called Progress NM, or New Mexico. And what is the point of planting adversaries at these rallies if it's not to stir up trouble, right? I mean, the more trouble they can cause, the more publicity they get. And of course, then the more the federal government thinks it needs to get involved. Of course, further into the article, Lujan points to his adversaries as the responsible parties. Get a load of this quote, which of course is at the end of the article here. It says, now we have to do the work of healing, of cleaning up the mess that Trump left here. He jumped on a private jet and headed out on his next racist rally. And we have to do the healing process here in Albuquerque of fixing the divisiveness he brought to town. Well, Lujan does a marvelous job of demonstrating another critical problem in society. One of not taking responsibility for one's actions. Most people go to a rally because they support the topic or the person speaking. If you're going to a rally to raise awareness of the other side, how many converts do you think you're really going to create from a group full of supporters? Common sense tells us that is not your intent. Speaking of irresponsibility, Bloomberg reports McDonald's protesters target annual meeting in a $15 fight. And it says here, there's a lady from Chicago. She's a McDonald's employee. She says here, we're coming to McDonald's doorstep to tell the company and its shareholders it's time workers shared in the company's good fortune. We can't wait any longer for $15 an hour and union rights, and we're going to do whatever it takes to make sure our voices are heard. Really? Well, basically this is a union-backed demonstration that's camped out near their headquarters. But yet, if you are an employee for McDonald's and you're employed, obviously, shouldn't you then also think that you're sharing in the company's good fortune at that point? She's saying that she can't wait any longer, for these rights, and that she's going to take whatever it is to make her voice heard. Well, again, why is it that if you cannot advance beyond an entry-level job that it's the fault of the employer? The responsibility should lie actually with you. And remember that the free market, or what's left of it, will seek solutions to problems it faces. If it is forced to raise wages this high, then maybe there's some unintended consequences these activists will not be able to compete with. Case in point, McDonald's ex-CEO, his name is Ed Rensi, says it's cheaper to buy a $35,000 robotic arm than it is to hire an employee who's inefficient making $15 an hour bagging French fries. So, as we enjoy our Memorial Day weekend, we close with an invitation for you to get involved. If the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, then what are you doing today, tomorrow, or even years into the future to safeguard this liberty? Visit jbs.org to get involved today. Until next week, we'll see you then.